Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Feeling and Healing podcast. I am so happy to welcome Brenda Carl today to the show. She is an empowerment coach and also works with people on their inner child healing. So, welcome, Brenda. It's so great to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm a little nervous, but yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you. I love talking about the like feeling and healing
Yeah,
topics.
feeling
So
and healing.
feeling
Well, we were
and healing,
just
yeah,
talking about feelings
yeah.
and healings. Well, speaking of too, and so all my listeners know, I reached out to Brenda because I just saw her post on Instagram, and she was talking about the brain and the nervous system, and I think that's just such an important message right now in the overstimulated world we live in. So I just would love to start the conversation off there of what do you do with your clients or with yourself? Because we were just talking about this. Like, how do you, we're always on the go and the to-do list is just like endless. Like, is there anything that you do consciously or even subconsciously to kind of stop you for being what I like to call in like that survival mode?
I think having awareness is
Mm,
a huge part of it because I think a lot of us are just unconsciously running around, being distracted or just always being busy. And so I think first having that awareness of being able to stop and like notice when you're like running around and you're not sitting with maybe your feelings or your emotions, or if you're even just being too productive and not taking care of yourself. But again, if we don't have awareness, and so, but it takes a lot of practice to have awareness. And it's even like, this is
yes.
why, like, even having coaches, like someone, you helping your clients or me helping my clients, having a third party person that, or a second party person, I guess, maybe we should
I know, right?
not a third party person. Um,
A
that
different
can notice
perspective.
a different
Yeah.
perspective, yes, that
Yeah.
can help you see it because you can't see it yourself, like if I'm running around, and somebody would be like, "Hey, Brenda, take a moment,
Yeah.
pause." Like, and so having somebody in your corner that can help support you in that. But again, just being able to have your own awareness of like, whoa, hold on here. Like, I need to take a break because like my body's really like you can
Hmm.
feel it in your body, and just that dysregulation, and then your mind starts running with anxious
Hmm.
thoughts, or you're just like, for me, I get like really spacey. I get like
Hmm.
I can't focus on anything, and so then it's like, yeah, I think I need to take a minute to take care of myself and like center, come back, because yeah, when we're in that dysregulated state, we our prefrontal cortex is offline. And so then we actually aren't thinking clearly, and our problem solving abilities are not online. Our creativity, our memory, like access to memory and things like that, it's all just offline. And so, because we're just trying to survive in this moment. And so, by pushing through, we're actually not going to do our best work because we don't have access to the larger intelligence that we have.
Our
So,
brains carry and hold. And I love that you brought up that because I always say and I know this, but we were just talking about this prior to the podcast. Like I know that our brains are built for survival. Like they're just built to keep us safe and survive. And you would know more than this than me, but from the little that I know and the reading about the brain and chemicals in the brain, like it is not as sophisticated as a muscle it is, and that it's attached to our nervous system. It also is very tricky and it plays tricks on you a lot. Like I know we were just talking about like the negativity bias, and how even though we're aware of this, like I love that you brought up awareness as well. Even though we're both aware that like my mind is if I have situations, is gonna probably pick the negative one first because of the negativity bias, that still has an impact on me as a human being, even though I logically know that like, yes,
right.
your brain's gonna go there. That's why I think it's so important, empowering, using meditation, mindset tools to really learn how your brain works. Because I feel like people don't really understand the power that it can have on your life if you know these little nuances about your brain.
100%. That has helped change my life. But first, I want to say really quick that I think the reason why we can know and have the logic, but still get caught up in the anxious thoughts and things like
Yeah.
that, like the negativity bias, it's because our emotional brain is
Mhm.
overrides our logic brain or our logical brain. And so in that moment, our emotional brain has hijacked all of our
Yes.
logic, all of our reasoning, because then our amygdala is online now, and so that's why we can know all the things that we need to do, and it's hard to bring ourselves back to center and to be able to do what we want to do. Um, and then, oh, I forgot what else was it that you had said.
Oh, no, it's all right. I mean, well, I also know too that for me personally, from I said the little I've read, I know our emotional side of our brain moves a lot faster than our
Yeah,
logical one. So like that's why people, if they get angry or you're stuck in traffic and you have like like you're allowed, you're human, we're all human beings. If you have an outburst, like it's because that side of our brain just isn't thinking, isn't is processing faster than our logical side.
yeah, because our logical side, I think, is where like kind of our conscious mind is. And then
Mhm.
I think like all of our emotions, it's all inside of our subconscious, right? All and that's processing a whole lot more information than we're even aware of.
Yeah.
And so yeah, something happens and you get triggered, and then you're right back in that moment where like the original wound happened. And the stronger the emotional, like the pain behind it, the bigger your reaction is going to be in the moment. So then your reaction is even like on a larger scale. So then your brain is really like offline, all your logic and your reasoning, and then you're saying and doing things that you're
Yep.
like, who is this person saying and doing these things? And then later you regret them.
And then you go through that, unfortunately, that as you said, that like I hate to say this. I know like there's like no bad emotions. I'm supposed to say that as a potential therapist, but there are I think shame and guilt are like super bad, regret are
Yeah,
like really, really bad emotions. And I do that. Like they call it like, the sports term of like Monday morning quarterbacking. Like I'll sit sometimes and like I'll act a certain way, but then I'll be like, and honestly, I'm probably the only one that notices it. And I'll be like beating myself up over saying something or maybe being short with somebody and I'm like, Danielle, like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, I'm literally like self-sabotaging myself, which I've had to work on. And I love that you mentioned like triggers and wounds because I think that this is just my perception. I would love to know your thoughts on it. I think we have this like negative connotation that like we never want to get triggered in life. And not saying I'm walking into the world being like, trigger me, but like I think our triggers are there are signals to let us know what we still need to heal.
a
And
hundred
while they're
percent.
like not maybe the best experience, being triggered can tell you a lot.
100%. So when we're triggered, so we're always filtering reality through our beliefs. And so if something
Mhm.
happens in the external, two people can see the exact same situation differently, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm getting triggered because of my thoughts about this event. The event is completely neutral. And so my beliefs about whatever is happening is creating the emotional reaction within me. And so then I'm reacting, I'm triggered. And so, they say triggers are your teachers. And that's
I
because, yeah,
love that.
now it's showing me, okay, what belief could I be having, right? That this is the thought that I'm having about this. Somebody takes 2 hours to text you back. One person can be like, they're busy living their own life. And the other person's like, oh my God, they haven't texted me back.
I
They don't
know,
like
I
me because
know. Yep.
I'm not enough. And so it's reinforcing that belief of I'm not enough. There's like, I'm flawed.
Mhm.
There's something wrong with me. No one could ever love me. See, and so, yeah, we're always filtering reality through our beliefs, but a lot of times we don't know that we're just walking around unconsciously, like we're getting triggered all the time. And until awareness, right, and then noticing like what is this belief that I have, and then working on changing that, which
Mhm.
takes time, right? Because
Oh yeah.
every thought and every belief is a neural pathway in your brain. And so when something happens in the external, your brain immediately goes to that same thought about this event because it's the well-worn path in your brain. It's like a path in the woods, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's just that neural pathway. It just automatically defaults to that because the brain likes to conserve energy. And that thought has been repeated so much about, like, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. That is
Hmm.
your like default mode. And so anytime something in that external that happens that matches this thought, it immediately is like, yep, I'm not enough. See, I knew it. And
It validates
so
it.
it
Yeah.
validates it. And so it does take time to change our beliefs 100%, but we can't change our belief if we're not aware of it. And so when we get triggered, that's when we can be like, oh, I have a belief here I didn't know I had. So yeah,
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I love the metaphor you use, like the walk in the path. Like I always like to think of like neural pathways, like, when you're like it's like a river, like water, and they're like the on the ground, or I guess it's the ground of the river, like, the dirt like that's in the river. It's like it creates those kind of like, I don't know, like indents, I guess. I don't know, but
yeah,
like it's like, but so when that's why it's also so in my experience, when you're truly healing those wounds, as you said, like forming different beliefs around your feelings, like that's why it's so hard to impart to take action on them out in the real world and out in the external, as you say, because you are literally rewiring your brain to, first of all, erase those neural pathways, which
yeah,
takes time, like kind of erode them, and then create new ones.
yeah. 100%. Because like every time you have that thought, you're reinforcing it. And
Hmm.
so, and then like so say you switch it and so you say like no I am good enough. Every
Yeah.
time you do say that, the I'm not good enough starts to get weaker and weaker. It starts to, like say it's the path in the woods. It starts to become a little overgrown, and so it's not as
Hmm.
easy. You're getting like brambles and
Yeah,
branches
yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
are starting to cover the path, and so you can't walk through it as easily. And then now you're over here, you're having to like chop the trees down that are covering this new path, right? That's the rewiring. And
Yeah.
so it takes time, it's repetition. You can't just chop a tree down with one swipe. And so it's like repeatedly hitting it, paving this path. And then with each new belief, each time you reframe it, you're
Yes.
making that belief stronger. And so then that path just gets a little clearer. And then soon it will become the well-worn path. And soon that will become your default mode, your default thoughts. Something will say your friend doesn't text you back for 2 hours. Your first thought will now be, they must be busy,
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
that
Instead of they don't like me, or
catastrophizing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
But
will say, and I would love, because that I know that, so I will say full full disclosure, I do that, but I know it's because like when somebody doesn't text me back or immediately, I associate like urgency with like attention. And I know what it's from. I've done the work. It's from my attachment style. I'm not sure if you're aware of attachment styles, but it's I
yeah.
have anxious attachment style,
Yeah.
and it's because I have an abandonment wound because I was adopted when I was younger. I was adopted to a very loving family, but that one instance when I was born, just being taken from my birth mother, impacted the way I am in relationships. Well, yes, I consciously know. For instance, I text two of my friends this morning and asked them, I was like, oh, they live up in Boston, I'm in New Jersey, and I was like, oh, like, I'm thinking about coming up like they haven't gotten back to me, which I'm like, it's Friday, they both work, but like even I still know I have healing to do, because even as you said, like even though there is, bramble and weeds and things are growing over the old pathway, like after a while I'm like, oh, but like do they really care about me? Like
Yeah.
I'm like,
The old
wait,
pathway still looks a little comforting.
I
You're
know. I'm
like,
like, wait. I'm like, which I know they both are very, very good friends of mine, and I know they do love me unconditionally, and they always have my back. But like you do, unfortunately, that like that default switch is really hard to
yeah.
turn full the other way.
100%. And it takes a lot of repetition. It really
Yeah.
does. I too have always been anxiously attached. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I too used to get really upset, and I still can with
Yeah.
texting. So I can be the same way. But one thing that has helped me is noticing like, well, I take some time to reply to people back, like,
Yes.
messaging you sometimes.
Reacting
I
versus
like
responding.
I forget sometimes. Like I'll be in the moment, and so like I'll mentally respond, and then I'll forget to actually go and physically
Yeah.
respond. And so I'm like, well, if I'm doing this, they're probably doing that. Or I'll look at it like, well, if I took 2 days to reply to this person, but I don't love this person any less. I just was
Exactly.
busy. I had some stuff going on. And so reminding myself of that has helped me to not panic and, freak out every time somebody takes a little bit of time to text me back. And then I think also not everyone assigns texting frequency the same meaning to texting frequency. I think that is part of that anxious attachment, right? Where it's like, no, everyone has their own life, and somebody to them texting frequency could have absolutely nothing to do with
Nothing
how
to
they
do with
feel
you.
about you.
Yep.
It's just they get around to it when they get around to it, and they have no idea that you're gotta fix that.
Catastrophizing. Yeah.
Catastrophizing. They have no clue, right? Because to them it's not relative to their feelings for you.
Well, it's so
Um,
funny you mentioned catastrophizing because for those of you who don't know and don't struggle with anxiety, which I don't know who does, if you don't, I'm just gonna say it. If you don't have some level of anxiety in the society that we live in today, like I need to talk to you and be like, what are you doing? Because if you're, I mean, you must be at a level of self mastery that I'm not at. But catastrophizing, for those who don't know, is like when you take maybe like a small minuscule event and you make it a lot more dramatic in your mind, not and not impacting the other person, in my opinion, but almost to the point of like, as we're talking about, like not responding to a text message and thinking like, oh my God, this person doesn't love me, like going to an extreme, which is, I've had to work on that, struggling with anxiety, because I know, like, obviously having anxiety, my amygdala is probably a little bit bigger than somebody else's who doesn't struggle with anxiety. So that's why it takes me even more work to
yeah.
retrain my brain, and I've gotten a lot better at not catastrophizing. But for those of you who are around people who struggle with, unfortunately, anxiety, which a lot of the population does, I hope that people can understand that, like, that's unfortunately just the way they're, like, that's where they go. Like, it's just how they're built. And
Mhm.
you made a great point too about, like that, like sometimes you're like, you respond in your head, but then, and I always like to say too, and this is something that I've been working on as a human being, because as we were saying, our emotional brain moves faster than our logical one. Like, I always say there's such a big difference between a reaction and a response. And I try my best, which I fail sometimes because I'm human, to always respond instead of react.
Yes.
Um, because, and taking that time to process in between for both your sides of your brain to match up takes time,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like it's just gonna, that's the human experience. It's just gonna take time for each side to catch up to one another.
100%. But that's where the work is, right? And that's where you can actually see how much you've grown. So now instead of sending these like, oh my God, like, are we okay? Are you mad
Yep,
at
yep,
me? Instead of sending those texts, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna wait and see, and sure enough, they always do. They always text you back. Or if they don't, then you're like, well, that's not somebody that I would want,
exactly.
and I'm talking like maybe like dating or something, like
Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah,
like ghost you or something. And then you're just like, well, that hurts. That sucks. Yeah. But also like, I wouldn't want to be with somebody who can't communicate that they're just not interested in me. But in that moment, yes, we're triggered. And so a lot of times, yeah, you want to send those anxious text messages. But when you're able to just step back and be like, I'm just gonna take care of myself and make sure I can be as loving to myself as possible, then you create that space to respond instead of react. And a lot of times, so we have the negativity bias, but we also have the confirmation bias. And so we are assigning the meanings to everything in the external that matches what we believe about ourselves. And so we're always filtering the situations to match what we believe about ourselves, if that makes sense.
oh
So
yeah, no, it
yeah,
does.
so if somebody doesn't text me back, I have this belief that I'm just not lovable. And so, yep, see, it confirms it. But then if I have the belief that like I'm good either way, then I'm not going to be as upset about them texting me because I'm fine. I know my worth. I know that
Mhm.
my worth doesn't depend on whether or not they text me back. And so just yeah, just knowing and being able to see what your beliefs are and see what you're, because whenever you are getting triggered by something, you're just like, yeah, see, this belief is true for us. And then it's like, but who says that belief is true for you? Because all of
You
your
do.
beliefs have all
Yeah.
just been taught to you. You know, I'm very big on, I work with my clients on inner child healing
Mhm.
because all of your beliefs that you have about yourself were never yours to begin with. You weren't born thinking, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I have to work hard for love. None of that. You were a tiny little baby
I know.
born with a brain full of all of these thoughts. So they were all taught to you,
Yeah.
and so you can then change them. So you're
Yeah.
not stuck with them
Yeah, like, yeah,
100%.
to bring that point up, we are, unfortunately or fortunately, if we're conditioned at a very young
Yeah.
age to think a certain way, to be a certain way, and I'm sure as both as women, I've had conversations with this with other women, especially women. I'm not saying knocking them because men have their own, oh God, I got a whole podcast of what's going on right now. I feel I actually I hold a lot of compassion towards males right now, but like but honestly, like even that gender roles are something that I think right now we're experiencing a shift, a big shift. And I think everybody really doesn't know what to do. When we were just talking prior to this podcast about like for instance, like dating, like back in the day, it was like chivalry and the man kind of taking the lead was no, like, maybe the I want to say normal because I hate using that term because there really is no normal, but it was the trend or the I guess the general
The
population doing it, the
expectations, maybe.
expectation, yeah, exactly. But nowadays, like it's kind of like, but it could be a mixture of both. It could be, you know what I mean? Maybe the woman is a little bit more forward, and there's really, I feel like there's no rules or expectations because it like the rule book is not to say there was a rule book, but it was a lot easier, let's just say 50 years ago when life was a lot simpler.
Yeah, where it is, yeah, there were like certain oh my gosh, so societal
Societal.
rules that everyone followed because
Hmm.
we also to be part of the tribe, right? We all have to fit in. And so everyone does the same things. And so it's like, oh, well, that's what I need to do. I'm going to do that. And so, yeah, there's always been the typical male gender roles and that those were followed, like you were saying, the male led and they were chivalrous and all these things. And then, that has shifted. And so now, yeah, with dating, it's like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're gonna get, with the person you're on a date with. Like they could be filled with caramel inside and they could open the door for you.
I know, it's
Or
a
they could be
wild
filled with
world.
cherry and they could just be sit because gross. And they could and just be like sitting there like this, like
Yeah.
not talking during the day, not looking at you and when talking to you. And so yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think that hits home too. And what I always work with my clients on a lot is like we talked about a lot about beliefs, but like beliefs, values, they're very similar. But I
Yeah.
always work if you have very strong core values in your life, you work really hard because I know I do this. I have four very strong core values, and I work very hard in every aspect of my life, personally, professionally, even just like internally with myself, to always that's my north. So like if I'm in a situation and it doesn't feel right with my core values, I'm like, Danielle, you have to get out of this situation. So I think that's when I think unfortunately we're living in a very, I hate to use this word, but shallow society where like people kind of have gotten a little lost. And that's why I think we have those moments with not just in dating, but just in general with human beings where like people aren't their behaviors aren't aligning with their what they seem like they're doing or their affect, and then vice versa. Like that's why you said it's like a mixed bag. I feel like because honestly you don't know what you don't know,
Right. And I
which
think
is
what
unfortunate.
tends to happen is the pendulum swing, right? And
Hmm.
so typically wherever we're at in life, we're usually like most of us, majority are on one extreme opposite, right? And then we're like, oh, like this isn't working out for me anymore. I need to change. So then you don't stop right here in the middle. You go
You always
completely
go
to
to
the
the
other
other side.
side.
Yep.
Yeah. So now we have men over here. Men are the people that they initiate, they plan the dates, they open the doors, they buy you flowers And then we, women were like, well, what about women power? Like
Mhm.
femininity. And so then that kind of started to swing all the way now to the other side. And so now we have, where it's like the women are having to do everything in the relationship. And so it's like, well, we need to find that balance and come right back in the middle, 100%. But that's like all of life,
Oh yeah,
so
no, yeah,
it,
exactly. You're right, like 100% that we kind of live, I feel like, as human beings in society, not to say we live in extremes, but like you're right, the middle, to find that middle ground is so hard with a lot of different things. Like, and change too. Like, as you said, like when you're changing, like I know from my healing and my transformation, like that middle part didn't feel really good. Like that middle part when I was really going through like a big change and I was processing it and going through it, like it was really uncomfortable. That's just my experience. It was painful. Like my inner world was changing, so my external world was changing at the same time, and it was like very weird because I was like, this is strange. But now that I'm kind of like through, like that was one, like I assume and I hope I will continue to evolve and change. So but that was like I had a big like kind of growth moment in my life. And like it was that middle part was a little rocky, I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, it can be for sure. I know for me, like when I first started my healing journey, my one side of the pendulum was, I mean, my life is chaos, and maybe we can talk about that in a little bit, but like how our beliefs affect our behaviors. And so my
Mhm.
behaviors were just like, it was, I mean, I was like a walking red flag. I mean, I was like a whole ship full of red flags,
Oh my God.
like my life was just chaos, right? And so then as I worked on myself, like I went completely to the other side, super rigid, like white knuckling it, think of like
Mm.
an alcoholic recovering, they're like white knuckling it. Like I was super rigid, super disciplined, super structured, was not allowing myself to have fun and enjoy life. And
Mhm.
so then it's like, well, okay, I need to find that middle ground where like I'm not over here always having fun, not paying my bills, getting drunk every night,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
going over here to where it's like I'm eating only healthy stuff. I'm like being super rigid and strict, going to bed super early and not having any fun. And so it's like, yeah, I just that for me was just like I got to find that middle ground where I can eat the cake and also eat healthy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, as you said, yeah, we can talk about like the beliefs and behaviors because as you said, like as we keep saying, like that was your at the time your beliefs were changing. So and like, you
yeah.
went from one like I need to have all this fun to like nope, like can't have fun anymore. You know what I mean? Like no more fun, but it's like you have to shit like when you're changing your beliefs and when you're or defining a core value or something, I think it's super important to notice that like the why, kind of like look inward and be like, well, like why am I being so rigid right now, like why am I being so hard on myself, like as you said, like the whole point of life in my opinion is to like ever evolve and also just grow as a human being but also to enjoy it. And I think
Yeah.
you know, being kind to ourselves, practicing self-compassion, giving ourselves grace as human beings. Like I think we're also, maybe it's just me, but I know I am at least. And I think from talking to you, I can see I'm just super hard on myself. I know this, like logically, know
Yeah.
this about myself, but I'm still working on changing that belief in me about myself because it's because I still find I hit a wall sometimes and I have to check myself and bring that awareness in as you were talking about in the beginning of the talk, like be like no, like check myself and be like all right, you're being a little hard on yourself right now, Danielle, like
Yeah.
like give yourself some grace, and it's an ongoing practice. It never stops for me really.
And I don't think it ever will. I mean, I
No.
think we'll be 90 and we'll still be being
I
hard
know,
on
we'll be like,
ourselves.
we'll be wrinkly and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I had a thought.
Go for it. No, it's okay. No, I feel bad that did I interrupt you. I feel bad that if I interrupted you, but no,
No, no, you did
we were
not.
talking
No.
about growth and change and beliefs and what else? I'm trying to think what else we were talking about. If you look, I know this is everybody. This is how our brains work, right? I don't know,
Yeah.
like I don't
Ooh,
I
shiny
think that I know
toy.
it's like sometimes I'll be like I would love to be like in my brain. Sometimes I'm like I wish I like because I don't know what it does or like I mean I'm not as like well versed as you in like the brain, but like I'm like it is such a sophisticated muscle, but also too like not like
Right.
it's like
We're
it's
simple
so
beings. Like yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
No, you go. Yeah, you go.
Yeah, we're very simple but we like to make things way harder and
Yeah.
way
And
harder for ourselves. Like you said, like we're really hard on ourselves. And like for you've mentioned earlier, like overthinking, like, oh, did I say that weird? That
yeah.
person didn't even notice that you said something weird at all. Like the majority of us they're worried about how they probably looked or said something wrong, in that moment. And so we're the only ones who notice our flaws generally. Other people don't, but yeah, we are so hard on ourselves. And something that helps me is, and you mentioned this earlier in the episode, we're talking about, oh boy, um my brain.
I know. No, we're having moments.
See,
It's
a little
okay.
nervous,
No,
right? My
don't be
brain is
nervous.
just
It's okay.
like, ha, just kidding, I'm gonna pull that thought back from you. What was it we were talking about? Being loving on ourselves. Oh man, I'm so sorry. You'll be able
No,
to edit this out, right?
do not. No, do not be sorry. No,
Okay.
I like real moments like this. Like it's fine. Like clearly your brain is telling you something right now and
I was on a roll, and then I was really going there, but I think I was trying to go to I was trying to bring two different concepts together, and I think I lost it a little bit. What was I saying? We were talking about being loving on ourselves, being hard on ourselves,
yeah.
and what was it I was gonna say? Man, because you talked about it in the beginning. Um,
Awareness. We were talking a lot about awareness. Let me dig back in my brain. And also too
see if you
everybody
have any luck.
it is a Friday, so I don't know about you, Brenda, but when Friday rolls around, like my brain just starts to
Yes.
it gets into Friday mode, and it's like, all right, like it gets a little tired at the end of the
It's
week.
ready for
So
the weekend. It's
I
ready for
know,
the
right? It's
fun, right? You got
exactly
the
it's ready
middle.
to shut off this, but I don't know. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think. We were talking about awareness, loving ourselves, self
Well, I
love.
guess I can just, and we'll see if it just comes back around naturally. The other thing I was going to talk about with loving ourselves is, for me, connecting to my inner child. So
Mm,
connecting to little Brenda, and I have a picture of myself on my lock screen on my phone. And so I see her cute little adorable face all day long. And so I
yeah, I love
used to hate myself. I was full of so much shame and guilt, and um, we were talking about how knowing the reasons right behind
that.
like our behaviors helps us to have compassion for our behaviors. And so learning like, oh, well, that's why I was that way, and then having compassion, but then like looking at, well, I'll just show you, look at how cute she is.
Oh, no, I
Like, just
love this. Moment.
look, can you see her?
Oh, that's little
Look
Brenda.
at how adorable she is. And so,
God.
like, when I look at this face, like, if she was a little girl that came up to me today, and this thought that's running through my head right now about
Would you say
me
that
as a
to
person, about me not being good enough, me having messed everything up, would I say that
say
to
that
her?
little girl?
No. So then why am I saying that to myself? And so that has really helped me change my entire life. But because, the whole like self-love, it's such like a buzzword, but really it's only when we love ourselves that we begin to change our behaviors, because we're like, no, I don't want to keep treating myself this way, because I do deserve better. I do deserve to believe that I'm worthy, that I am good enough. I do deserve to believe that I don't have to work so hard and burn
Mhm.
myself out being productive, because I'm good enough just as I am.
Yeah,
And so just connecting to your inner child, like find a picture of yourself as a
I
child,
love
put it on
that.
your lock screen if that
I think
helps,
that's so great.
or
I
like
love
hang
that.
it somewhere, because we're all doing the best that we can in every moment. And so any of your like past mistakes or any, if you did say something awkward, that was just in that moment. That was the best you could do in that moment. And, again, back to like neural pathways. Each neural pathway, I like to think of it as like each pathway has access to certain choices, certain behaviors. You only, you're thinking you're walking down the path and it's just there's choice A, choice B. These are the only ones that you can access when you're on this path. But then when you're consciously creating a new pathway, right? You're rewiring your brain, that's when you now have new choices, new behaviors, because that path carries those. This path didn't have those, And so knowing like that was the only thing I could have done with where I
Yeah.
was at with my consciousness level or whatever was going on in my life. Those were the only choices and options that I had in that moment.
Yeah.
And so when I work on rewiring and changing my life, okay, so now I have access to these choices over here. Like, ooh, this is getting a little bit better. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But then we can then, instead of like judging ourselves for our past mistakes and seeing our choices and our behaviors over here, we can begin to like understand why I had that behavior. And a lot of it has to do with we're in survival mode. And so we
Yeah.
don't have access to our logic and our reasoning and our planning. That's all out the window. And so you were just trying to survive in that moment. And so your body, your nervous system was just trying to keep you alive, like with addictions and things like that. Like, because I've struggled with alcoholism. And so like that was a huge part of my life and my journey of of healing. And so knowing that my body, my nervous system was just trying to keep me alive, so then I don't shame myself for it. So then that allows me to love myself. And it's only when we love ourselves that our amygdala will calm down. And when we love ourselves, we'll release the oxytocin ourselves, the serotonin. So, like, we don't need somebody in the external to release those chemicals in our brain. We can do
We
it
need to do it
ourselves
ourselves.
when we love ourselves. And when those chemicals are released, we feel safe and our amygdala comes down, our parasympathetic nervous system comes back online. So, we're now regulated. So, now we have access to those better choices, those better behaviors, But when we're shaming ourselves, and telling ourselves we could do better, we need to be doing more, we're actually shifting our into that survival mode. Our
This
nervous systems are
super
becoming dysregulated.
that is super interesting because that is like I love that you said that because I'm thinking in my brain, like, yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you that, and I never really thought about shame as an emotion and then it triggering but you're right, it does
It
trigger
does.
the nervous system to be in survival mode. And I even will go back because being putting on my family therapy hat, and I know this, the first person or the first people that put kind of teach you shame in your life, unfortunately, are normally your parents.
Yeah.
Maybe disciplining you when you're younger. And it's not by a fault of any means. It's just
Because that's what they were
you're a
taught, right?
kid.
That's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
generational trauma. It just gets passed
Yeah, and
down.
it's amazing how like that little nuance, and I feel that for a lot of people, even if you, and not saying, parenting's hard, you don't get a playbook with your kid, like, but unfortunately, if you're even just something being scolded for, I don't know, running out, you shouldn't be running out in the street if there's a cars coming. Yes, like, like, but that scolding or that action could inflict so much shame. And talking about our inner child wounds are our core wounds, unfortunately, and that's
Yes.
why I think shame and guilt hit so hard as adults, because it's really programmed in us very early on, like those negative emotions that are really really conditioned in us very early on in life, unfortunately.
Yeah, and even just the belief that we have to be productive, we have to have
Hmm.
high success and achieve. And that just comes down to that's like that it's all a survival mechanism. I mean, ultimately everything we are doing we're trying to survive. And
Yeah.
so by even us doing this podcast, right? Like we're trying to be of value to the tribe because
Right.
if our values increased, then we move up the social ladder, the hierarchy. We now have access to better food choices, mates, things like that, because
Mhm.
our brains haven't evolved enough yet to understand that we're not living in the caves
Hey, man, yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah.
We have access to a lot of mates, which can be good or not good. You get on the dating app and you're like, holy cow, there's a lot here,
I know, right? It's a little
our brains
overwhelming.
haven't.
No, but it's so funny you mentioned that, and I'll guess we'll wrap up here because I could talk. You definitely have to come back on for another episode because I could talk to you all day. But going back to kind of like our brains, I always say this: we were not built, our bodies and our brains, unfortunately, were not built with like how fast we are moving, the environment and society like that we live in right now. Like this is this big social experiment of like human beings being so because we're so overstimulated. And that's why I
Mhm.
think, unfortunately people are suffering from chronic anxiety, being in survival mode. Just we can't like nobody's slowing down, and it's not our fault because it's our society that's as you said, we're trying to stay in survival, but when do we get to a point of like enough is enough? Like our your brain
Yeah.
we our brains physically are at the point like as much as I love these phones, people are probably listening to it on their phones. Like these things, oof, what they've done to our society and our brains. I would
Yeah.
love to see a brain, for a kid that like we're like an older generation, but like kids that are growing up with screens now, like I would love to see their brain scans versus ours,
Right.
years from now.
Yeah. And like the whole like even rushing around, that's dysregulating your nervous system, right? And
Hmm.
so even like, oh, I'm running late, you're now dysregulated. Now you're like your logic, your reasoning, you're like you're on edge, And
Hmm.
so yeah, we're all walking around like that and we're all just rushing around. We're all constantly dysregulated, but we don't notice it. We're not we don't take the time to like feel into our bodies like okay like I'm not feeling very good right now and like what's going on here, why am I having all this anxiety and all that, because the anxiety it just is going to keep fueling more anxiety. And it's easier said than done for sure to stop the spiral, to get out of it and to like regulate yourself, but that's the work, right? Regulating yourself, calming your nervous system down, so then your prefrontal cortex comes back online. And then that's where all of your power lives. All of your power is in the prefrontal cortex. And I think that's a lot of why like Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of like right now, because right now, because if I'm worrying about the past or like regretting the past, worrying about the future, my amygdala is online, my prefrontal cortex is offline. And so I don't actually have access to better choices, to planning, to problem solving, to creativity. And so when you're in the now moment and you're not regretting or worrying, your prefrontal cortex is online. You now have access to all of your intelligent capabilities and creativity, all of that. And so, even like if you notice yourself being like, "Oh, I'm running late, just pause and be like, no,
Yeah.
I'm right on time. Like it's perfectly fine. I'll get there when I get there. And you'll notice you'll feel better in your body and you will have a much better trip when you get there. Like driving there,
Yeah.
you're not going to be like super
I know y'all
anxious
tense. Yeah,
and
yeah,
your heart's racing, and then you'll just be like, oh, I'm calm. I'm good, and then you'll have a much better experience when you get to your destination. So
for
that's
sure.
all life is. We're trying to get to the end, right? But there is no
There's the
end
journey in between.
destination. It's the journey in between. Yeah, it's all of the things you learn about yourself, all of the wisdom that you gain, all of the growth and all that. So
No, but Brenda, this has been such, as I said, I could talk to you all day. So,
for
but we
sure, I
definitely
would
have to
love to come back.
come back
Yes.
for another because I said I love like learning about the brain. I mean, as I said, I say this all the time as a mental health professional and potential one, and being in mental health, the we don't learn about the brain in school enough. I think personally, that's why I'm so interested in it. Because I'm working with people and I'm like, well, I'm working with your brains and your nervous systems. I should know a little bit about this. But thank you so much for coming on and just I guess
Yeah.
tell everybody that where they can find you. I believe on your Instagram is probably the easiest way.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Instagram is the easiest way. Because on my Instagram you can find like I have a stand store And like on there, I have like a free mindset shift guide
Nice.
that basically walks through like all of the big things that could be going on and how to reframe them. So if you struggle with reframing something, because that's how you rewire your brain, is by reframing in the moment of being triggered. And so it kind of walks you through how to change the narrative, the story that you're telling yourself, the meaning that you're assigning to something. And so they can find that there.
Thank you so much, Brenda. This was such a refreshing talk. You will definitely be coming back on because, as I said, we could talk all day.
For
But
sure.
thank you
Yes, I
so
love
much.
talking to you as well.
All right. Have everybody have a great day, whatever evening, morning, wherever you are. I always say morning or day. I don't know why. And as always, you can find the Feeling and Healing podcast on YouTube as well as on Apple. I always say iTunes, but it's podcasts. And I'm dating myself now, and Spotify.